Bluff City Media presents the Two Buck Sports Show. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Drew Gann and Rusty Witten. Now, let's get to the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to your Tuesday edition of the Two Buck Sports Show, live on your lunch break. I am here with my guy, Uncle Buck, a.k.a. Drew Gann, a.k.a. the lesser half of the Two Buck Sports Show. Falling out with you here on this Tuesday. How are you, sir?
Listen, I might be the lesser half of a lot of things, but it ain't this show. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. The snow is finally clearing. I'm gonna get to that in a minute.
Yeah,
but,
same.
Yeah, everything's good here in North Mississippi. Appreciate everybody being here on this Tuesday. We've got lots to talk about and stuff that's not exactly fun to talk about. So we're gonna get
better
to
not suck. I agree.
Hey, Daniel said it best on Thursday's edition of the Two Buck Sports Show. I promise you one thing: we will have a goodish show today. And so, yeah. So we're gonna get to the Grizzlies. We're gonna get to Taylor Jenkins. We're gonna get to everything. But first, we're two best friends. We've been friends for a decade now, and we didn't talk much this weekend. So we're gonna start this Tuesday show the way we start every single Tuesday show, with our best and beef of the week. The best thing that happened. The worst thing that happened this weekend. Rusty, I set them up. You knock it down. What's the best thing that happened this weekend?
It's the snow, man. I'm a snow kid at heart. I love playing in the snow. I didn't make snow cream this time. I'm bummed about that because it was like the perfect snow cream type snow. But it was nice. We didn't get any ice. We didn't get any of that sleet wintry mix. It was a pure fluffy snow. I played with Shelby out in it. She played with my roommate's dog, with Maggie's dog. Had a great time watching it snow. Like, I love the snow, maybe because I didn't get enough of it growing up in Mississippi. I lived 1 year in Maine, and we got like 30 feet, and that was amazing. It's like the best year of my life.
That's why.
And so I love when the snow comes. And so for me, it was the snow is my best of the week, man. How about yours?
Yeah, so I'll get to the snow in the second half of this segment because I'm not really on your team. Not wholly.
Yeah, I have some beef with the snow that I'll get to in a minute as well.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just kind of here really quickly. One, we didn't have any problems at work. Snow freaks me out, and we were good. So that's a great thing. The big thing though is I am a country boy. Like, I don't need much to make me happy. I drink my coffee black. I don't need much. However, I was exposed to something that made me feel a little fancy, and I got excited this weekend. And that was, y'all are going to laugh at this because this is like base level stuff. I had coffee from a French press this weekend.
Dude, I do that every morning just about.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, thanks for not saying anything to me for 32 years. I've had a Keurig, and I've always griped about this dang Keurig because it never tastes as good as anybody else's coffee, and it never makes enough. And my mom got a French press from my sister for Christmas. And so at my mom's house this weekend, she pours coffee, and I was like, this is really good. Where do I get one of these, and how much do I have to pay for it? And that afternoon, they went to Marshall's and like, hey, here's one for $8. You want it? And I was like, yes. And so I got it, bought me some coffee, made coffee from a French press last night, put the rest of it in the refrigerator, and gave my wife cold brew this morning. It's amazing.
It's great, man. I love my French press. I use it all the time. It's a great way to make coffee. It's a little bit, it's exhaustive. It's a process, but it's worth it because the product is so great. Much like snow cream. Real quick, Wayno is like crashing out in the comments here. Snow cream is not something ungodly. It is, you take snow, vanilla, sugar, a little cinnamon, and you make ice cream out of it. I know y'all don't know what that is down in Australia because everything down there is angry and hot and ready to kill you, but snow cream is amazing.
Also, Wayno, snow is like lightly frozen water that falls from the sky.
Yep.
And instead of melting when it hits the ground, it just kind of covers it. It looks very beautiful.
It does.
I'm glad we took this time to educate Wayno on what Mississippi forms of precipitation is. Yeah. So I had a French press this weekend. It was top notch. So worst thing that happened this week.
So my problem with the snow is as it starts to melt, it uncovers things that were underneath it. You get mud, you get slush. Well,
potholes.
My roommate dog can be a little turd sometimes. And so like I let her out before the show and I'm trying to get her to come back in, and she just stands in the yard and looks at me while I'm like, and sidebar, my girlfriend's name is Maggie. His dog, his name is Maggie. Not related.
Not the same person.
Like Not the same person. One's got 2 legs, one got 4 legs. So the 4-legged Maggie's out in the yard, and I'm like, Maggie, come on, I gotta go. Come on, Maggie, come on. And she's just looking at me. I'm like, dadgummit. So I walk out there to get her, and I'm kind of like trying to walk through the snow and piece around because I have a large Doberman, and large dogs produce large excrement. You know, you have a big dog. And so I'm walking out there to get her before the show, and I get out there, and I finally get her to come in. You have to walk to her, and then she'll sprint to the door. And I come back in, like, dadgummit, Maggie, I ain't got time for all this. So I open the door, and I look down, and I'm always careful when I step in my yard. Yep. But the snow hides the dog piles, and then you step on one, and it's all over my nice work boot. So after the show, while I'm on some calls for work this afternoon, I'm going to be sitting here with a brush trying to clean dog crap out of the bottom of my shoe. I love snow, but I hate when it melts off and uncovers crap like that in the yard that I don't see. Pun intended.
No pun intended. So, yeah, snow is, my beef is like, I definitely like it. When I was a kid one time, it snowed and we had a lot of fun in it. And then like the afternoon came and it was like 50 degrees and it was all gone. And I wore shorts to the movie theaters. It's like a core memory for me. Like that's just, if you don't like Mississippi or Memphis weather, wait a day, you know? And I hate driving on roads after it snows because it's like they clear the roads and then it melts and then it freezes. And that's when you get the black ice. And so we kind of blazed the roads all weekend, regardless of the conditions. And it was like, tight buttholes driving the roads all weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't too bad here in Memphis. My truck got a little bit loose. I took Maggie to and from work on Saturday because we were worried it was going to be bad, and it wasn't. I got out and went to the gym in the snow and drove in it when it was just snowing, and it was perfect because it was just snow on the road. It wasn't slick. There was clear paths where people have been driving. So it was like, again, for us in Memphis, this is like a once in a decade type snow because it wasn't wet. It wasn't mixed with sleet. And so we actually got fluffy snow. Right. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
But that's enough of that.
Yeah. That's our best and beef segment of the week where we talk about snow and educate the Aussies on what said snow is. But now, what you're all here for? The Memphis Grizzlies. So,
yes, sir.
I was on Cloud 9 Saturday night after the Minnesota Timberwolves game. You can watch my recap on the postgame bouts of that on YouTube. It was 12 minutes long, and I had a lot of fun. Since then,
not fun.
Last night, the Memphis Grizzlies lose by 2 points, although it should have been 5, to the Houston Rockets. They lose again. John Morant has never beaten Dylan Brooks in a game in which they competed against each other. And we have thoughts. So, Rusty, we're going to talk about Taylor Jenkins in a minute.
That's coming. So hang with us.
About the game.
We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about players. TJ is coming. So, Astronomo, I'm going to get to some of your stuff here in a minute. Thanks for being in the comments here, sir. We're going to get there. Last night was about as demoralizing a loss as I've seen in a long time because we were going toe-to-toe with a playoff team, shot for shot. Jalen Green was amazing for Houston last night. He's so quick off the dribble. Şengün had a great game last night offensively. He's a good post player for Houston, but we were going toe-to-toe with him, and we had the lead for the vast majority of the game. At one point, it swelled to 14 points. Houston has now come back and won 7 times when down double digits this year. So a lot of it is credit to Houston. They're tough. They have an edge. They're a hard-nosed basketball team, and they're very physical. All the things that our team doesn't have right now. We are 3-8 against the Western Conference top 6 teams this year, and 2 of those wins were against a Nikola Jokic-less Nuggets and a Luka and Kyrie-less Mavericks. So really, those 2 teams are not that great when we beat them.
No.
And in those moments, our clutch games, we're 2-3 in clutch games now. We don't play well down the stretch. It's like we got like Desmond Bane is the one I want to start. We'll start with Desmond Bane to talk about the team, and I want to get your thoughts on him. He was amazing in the third quarter. Dylan activated him with that tech, but then he went dormant in the fourth quarter. For all of what he did in the third, we got nothing out of Desmond Bane in the fourth. And for me, I would have liked to see him get more touches or create more shots because Houston had nothing for him in that third quarter.
Right.
And thoughts on Desmond Bane?
Yeah, well, just let me touch on just the big picture, the 48 minutes first, the whole. This was an extremely frustrating loss. But I felt like for 3.5 quarters, that was exactly what I wanted out of the Grizzlies coming off of what I called a massive mojo win on Saturday
Mhm.
night against the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Was despite Ja played terrible in that game, Jaren was great, Desmond was great, and you found a way to win in a close game, and that I was on cloud nine. And in this game, the Grizzlies for the game shot 53% from the field and 44% from three, and I don't understand how it goes squirrely. But what happened is in the fourth quarter, the Houston Rockets go on a 23-7 run between the 8-minute and 10-second mark and the 1.5-minute mark, 27-3 in crunch time. And that's a big boy win for Houston. And I know they've got vets. They've got Van Vliet and Dylan and Steven Adams and stuff like that. But that's the core of that.
Young.
Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, like these guys are young. And that's the game that the Grizzlies, I feel like, are the more senior team. And you've got to be able to play big boy basketball with them. And the team just folded. And we've got different thoughts as to why that we'll get to. But it was very I never until the Rockets cut it to 3, I never thought the Grizzlies were losing that game. I watched that game and enjoyed it for a long time.
Same.
Until we just weren't winning anymore. And once again, we could not course correct. Could not stop the bleeding.
That's the problem, is we don't have a guy night in and night out. Like some nights it's Josh, some nights it's Jaren, some nights it's Dez. We don't have a guy that we can count on to be a run stopper consistently. And last night, it was Desmond Bane in the third quarter. Bane is great when he plays angry. We won't talk about the fact that we're now like 0-5 all time when he gets a tech.
I text Rusty last night. I said, Bane's getting mouthy. We're going to lose this one.
100%. And that's what happened. But defensively, you're absolutely right. I do want to talk about that because Jalen Wells played really well last night, all things considered. Like, Jalen Green got his buckets, but Jalen Wells was a big part of why we were in that game until late and bringing us back in with that big wing 3 that he hit with about 3 minutes to go to cut the lead to 1 or tie it, like ballsy type shot. We did a lot of things well. We just didn't do them long enough. We just kind of run out of steam at the end of games mentally, I guess.
Well, Jalen Green had him a night. And in the NBA and in sports in general, there's going to be days that you just got it. And Jalen Green had it. He scored 42 points. He had 31 points from the field, so subtracting free throws. And he only took 18 shots. I mean, listen, that was an efficient, electric performance.
He was great.
He was hitting wild shots. Mm-hmm. And you just have to tip your cap at that point. But the frustrating part when things started going left, it was because Amen Thompson got 4 dunks in 4 consecutive possessions. Like, they kept on getting dunks. And I'm just like, bro, what are we doing? And these aren't even like posters. These are just like
run out dunks.
I guess I'll just dunk it. No, it's in a half court system.
And it's because
how in the world, when you've got Zach Edey in the game, does Amen Thompson dunk the ball that easily so many times in a row?
Two things.
I know why.
Two reasons. Number one, we fought over the top of every single screen, and we were like a dog chasing their tail. Like, they would do a screen at the top of the key for Amen or Jalen, and Jalen or Dez or Ja would fight over the screen, and then you're chasing them to the basket as they go and score. That's reason number one. Reason number two is Zach Edey spent way too much time at the three-point line last night. I understand you're trying to space the floor on offense, but like, he was drifting out too far. He was not in the lane where he was out of position for most of the game last night.
Well, and it's because Houston used Zach Edey's defender to set those screens, and they were setting those screens between the top of the key and half court, you know? And Zach Edey is just not fast enough to recover. How many times and I've got Zach, we'll get to Zach Edey, but like I'm frustrated. And but it's just like down the stretch, there were lapses, and no matter what Houston wanted to do, the Grizzlies could not stop them. And
made no adjustments in the game from a player standpoint. Nobody tried anything different.
And so we really screwed the pooch last night, and I really only point my finger at the players. Desmond was really good in the third quarter, but he's been really good in several third quarters here in a row, and not necessarily the fourth. Ja was really good in the fourth quarter. To start the fourth quarter, But when you put yourself in a position that it's a bucket game late, you've got to have that bucket. And Saturday night, John made those. And last night, we just didn't get them.
Yeah, agreed. And a lot of that is illness. He was tired. He played 37 minutes last night. So kudos to that. I'll give him that. But it was the wrong 37 minutes, which we'll get to more here in a minute. But Ja just ran out of gas down the stretch. Like you could tell he was tired at the end of that game. And I think that the minutes could have been managed a little bit better, which we'll get to here in a minute. Zach Edey shooting threes on offense when he is the biggest guy on the court is a terrible, terrible move. When he was against Şengün is a great offensive center, but you can tie him in a knot defensively pretty quick. I don't understand.
He had foul trouble last night.
Who's Zach Edey or Şengün?
It was Şengün.
For sure, because Edey ultimately fouled out as well. But, I don't understand why you're not getting Zach more post-ups back to the basket possessions early, because against a guy like Şengün, I understand it when Steven Adams is in the game. You want to space it out because Steve-O's a great defender. We saw that for years here. But for me, I agree. I have thoughts about Zach Edey. I think we're criminally misusing him because we're using him like he doesn't get enough reps to actually be something. To me, I think the formula is, and Statty Sean on Twitter talks about this. I'll get to here in a minute. But Edey should be starting a lot of these games and getting there. See if we can get their centers in trouble. See if we can get them in some pressure and some foul trouble down at the end. But closing with BC is the right lineup because when Edey's on the floor, we're a negative 3.4 net rating with our starters. When BC's on the floor, it's a plus 10. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is Edey doesn't have the reps to get there, and then we don't use him. Like he could have easily gotten some buckets early against Şengün and got him in foul trouble earlier, and it could have been a difference in the game.
Yeah, I do not want Zach Edey in the starting lineup. I want Zach Edey playing 15 minutes a game, coming off the bench, and being an option off the bench. I'm tired of seeing him with John Morant. His screens are not good enough, and he's always in the way. You know, you're right. On offense, they hit him in the corner. And if you're going to hide him in the corner, he's useless because he can't shoot that shot. Well, I know he's got a good enough percentage. If he shot that shot at volume, it would not be a good percentage. And nobody's going to guard him out there. And once he catches it, he can't do anything with it. It's not like he's going to drive baseline or anything. Yeah. And so he's just always in the way. John Morant made a comment after the Minnesota game where he says, I made a shot that I normally make, talking about the floater. And you could say that was like, it's not a big deal, you know. But I truly believe that is something in John Morant that he feels like has not been available to him this year. And I said it when they drafted Edey. I said it when they started talking about this new European-style offense. Like, he's just going to be in the way. Mm-hmm. John Morant wants to go downhill and go get to the basket. And you cannot do that if your 7'5" dude is there along with his 7-foot defender and Ja's defender.
Agreed. Like a pick and roll setup, there's ways that we can make it work. But Zach Edey being at the 3-point line is not it, man. Like, and I hear kind of circling back, like the reps for Edey are going to come. I think he'll get better. Circling back, Josh shouldn't be tired. I get that, but he's also been sick. He's coming off an illness. I'm not making excuses for the guy, but like, we got all of John Morant that we could have got last night. I truly think that because of being sick and being like what he had, like with what he'd gone through, like I think we got all that we could. I agree. Maybe he tried to do too much. Like I said on Twitter earlier today, like I don't know why we went away from Dez. I don't know why we went away from Jalen Wells or Jaren. Some of these guys who are making shots. This is a phenomenal point. Shout out Chris Inger of the No Bluffing podcast. If you're only going to play Edey 15 minutes, might as well trade him. Like 15 minutes is not enough to get any kind of reps for a rookie to figure it out in the NBA.
I'll listen, but I'll be honest with you. Like, Chris, my problem with Edey is that I don't care about regular season. Like, I'm only talking about the playoffs here. Are we just going to, like, if your goal is to do what Los Angeles does and what Miami does and just punt on the regular season for development and rest and just go for it in the playoffs, then fine. Let Edey get a season. But I'm just like, Edey's not going to help us in the playoffs this year. I'm sorry. He is not as a starter playing over, not not playing over 20 minutes. And I'm not saying that Edey will not develop in year 2 and year 3 into a real NBA rotation player, but I just don't see him helping this year. And Taylor Jenkins' job is on the line this postseason. Everything is on the line. This is the start of the window here. It's prove it time. And I just don't see any situation in which Zach Edey is better than Brandon Clark playing with John Morant. Never.
I will concede some of that, but like we were promised a bill of sale where people are going to have to plan for Zach Edey, and the only people that are planning for Zach Edey are the people sitting behind him watching the game or leaning around him. Like, it's frustrating that we have he could be an offensive weapon because we've seen it. We've seen it in the NBA. In certain matchups, he's going to be much better than Brandon Clark because of his sheer size.
Yeah.
Now,
but
BC,
not
I like,
with Ja on the court. Not with Ja on the court, you haven't seen it.
Because we haven't tried any of the pick and roll and things that we could do. There is an offense there where it works. We're just like, we're not giving him a single chance.
Daniel said last night on the Grizz 901 show, and I'll throw it up here because he reminded me. And if you don't listen to the post-game show, win or lose, it's a perfect outlet to get your feelings out. Okay,
it is,
and it's immediate.
And it's also a good way to see that you are one of the more sane Grizzly fans out there, because there are some wild takes.
The only place crazier is like you find some spaces or something middle of the day on the day after. Like, oh boy. Edey, Clark, and Huff are all matchup dependent. And Clark is not a perfect big either, but he plays better with Ja. And maybe that turns into Edey one day. But I want the best players with Ja right now. And I'm not saying bury Edey on the bench. I like him playing 12, 15, 18 minutes. Mm-hmm. But when the game starts and when the game ends, and for most of Ja's minutes, I want Brandon Clark on the court.
And this is a phenomenal point. And Chris and I have been harping on this. I'll give credit because it started long before I did. I've come around to his way of thinking. I love the thought, if we're going to make a trade, let's kill two birds with one stone. I've gotten some heat for it in the past from other people, but a John Collins Sexton trade makes sense because it's a shout out to Drew for that one. It's an upgrade in the front court. John Collins is Brandon Clark with a jump shot in the 3. Colin Sexton is an absolute dog, and you pick your poison. John Morant or Colin Sexton. Now, there's packages where they can play together, but by and large, they're going to play independently. And I know Colin Sexton's expensive for a backup point guard, but the product on the court is instantly better if you can package some picks and Marcus Smart or whatever you can get and get Collins and Sexton out of Utah.
Yeah, I agree.
Also,
and we're not spending any more time talking about easy.
Front court and back court both need an upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this team has holes. This team is not perfect. This team somehow, and this is going to translate into our conversation in a minute, somehow is 25-15 despite Ja missing 17 games and Bane missing a handful of games and Vince Williams not playing and GG not playing and Marcus Smart missing a lot of games. Like, somehow this team is 25-15, but it is not a legit 25-15.
I'm glad you brought that up. Shout out Coach Vaughn. So the Grizzlies in 2024, 2025 so far, and this will be a good transition into our Taylor Jenkins talk. It's weird, 12-10 against teams that are 500 and above in our 25-12. 12-10. 10 of our 12 losses against teams with a 500 or better record. Again, we're 3-8 against playoff teams in the West. Now, Ja has missed 5 of those games against those teams in the West. Like, Ja hadn't played in some of those games. But it's not been a great product. And what's frustrating about that is we are in year 6 of the Taylor Jenkins experience. And just like I titled the episode, we're still reevaluating things. As a coach, you're always in the lab tweaking and working. But you would think, in my opinion, in year 6, we would see more progress in his ability to match up lineups with other teams. Like in the fourth quarter, when at the end of the third and the time when John and Jaren were out at the end of the third and the minutes that they were out in the fourth quarter, we were outscored 16-3. And I'm not a smart man. I'm like Forrest Gump, period.
I agree.
Not a smart man.
That may be the last thing we agree on today.
Probably. But I know well enough that if I'm Taylor Jenkins and I'm looking at my Waffle House menu and I can't figure out who to put in the game, that all I've got to do is this. Are you ready? This is just difficult. Is do this. And see who Houston's putting in. And then I can put my starters back in, because there was so many minutes last night where Jalen Green, Cam Whittemore, Fred VanVleet, those guys that were cooking us late, Amen Thompson played minutes against Luke and Jake and Santi and none of our best players. And that's where I'm at on Taylor Jenkins. I'm frustrated. Yeah, Bain and Wells were on the court, but I'm frustrated at our inability to make in-game changes 6 years into the Taylor Jenkins experience.
Yeah, I mean, listen, last night was extremely frustrating. I think Taylor has got to figure out a way to stagger his superstars minutes late differently, because what he used to do, Ja's typical rest time was the last couple minutes of the third quarter and the first 3 to 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. And then he played the last 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, winning time. For some reason, since Ja's gotten back, Ja's gotten his break between like the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter and the 4-minute mark. Now, you're probably looking at that and you're like, well, it's less time, but it's more critical time.
It's the timing.
Yeah. And so ultimately, you've got a situation to where you allowed Houston to get back in it while you had Luke Kennard running the point. And that's just not acceptable. However, if you look at last night in particular, John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bain were in this game with a lead late, and they blew it. And Ja had 2 costly turnovers late. If you want to talk about fatigue because of sickness, the only time I saw that or can make an argument for that, because he didn't play sick, was he missed those 2 free throws late. But that's could obviously be attributed to fatigue. But you had a chance to win that late, and the players didn't execute. Taylor Jenkins does not pass the ball to Jaren Jackson Jr.
Agreed.
And Jaren quit touching the ball. Desmond took 3 shots in the fourth quarter, and Ja had a good start to the fourth quarter, but in crunch time, he missed 2 free throws. He had 2 turnovers. Like, he had a nice assist to BC, and he had he made a layup when he first got back into the game with like 3 to 4 minutes to go.
Yep.
But ultimately, the players kept allowing Amen Thompson to dunk the ball over and over and over and refused to get the ball to Jaren Jackson Jr.
Let me ask a couple questions about the game last night.
Sure.
Couple quick questions. Where was it at? Was it Houston?
I believe it was in Texas. Yes.
It was in Texas, in Houston, right? When Ja went out last night, right, with about 7, he went out with 7.5 minutes. We had a lead of 103 to 94, right? Jaren went out. Jaren went out at the 7-minute mark, and it was we were 103-94 when Ja went out, 103-95 when Jaren went out, right? They come back in. It's 105-102 when Tripp comes back in, 105-104 when Ja comes back in.
Right.
The game is in Houston against a tough, hard-nosed, playoff-ready team. The momentum is squarely in Houston's corner. And we know basketball is a rhythm sport. And it's hard to get in a rhythm when you're taking your break while the other team's getting all the momentum, and then you come right back out there. Like, Ja's a professional athlete. He needs to figure it out. I get that. But at the same time, if Ja plays the last 8 minutes of the game instead of having a huge chunk of that last 8 minutes being gone, I think Ja makes those layups. I think Ja makes those free throws. Because, again, it's hard to get in a rhythm when you, don't know your role. We've got some nights that Jake LaRavia's closing games. We got some nights that Santi Aldama's closing games. We got some nights that BC's closing games, and some nights he's not. We're throwing literal you-know-what at the wall and seeing what sticks in these late-game rotations.
Spaghetti.
Thank you. And it's hard to get in that rhythm late when you're coming out. By the time John and Jaren came back in, they blew that lead. We had no mojo, no momentum, none. And it's hard to overcome that on the road in a playoff atmosphere.
Listen, I will concede the point. I said before you asked the question, I would move the minutes in which John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. are taking their breaks. I get that. However, I'm not going to just sit here and act like the team played well. Like, the bench was not good. We want to talk about our depth. The depth sucked last night. Like,
it did.
With the exception with the one exception of Jake LaRavia.
In the first half.
He was awesome in the first
half. He was awful in the second half.
He wasn't awful. He just didn't play as much. But
awful.
We watching different games.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful. He was unplayable in the fourth quarter, and you know he was, man. He was in let's see, where is he at? He was a -10. He was only worse. The only people worse were BC and Dez. Like, he was a -10 last night because the second half was awful. Awful.
Anyways, I'm just saying they did not play well in the last 3 minutes. If you want to talk about, I concede the point that I would move the minutes in which they are taking their breaks to the front half of the fourth quarter, as long as you will concede that the last 3 minutes was an abject disaster.
I will, and I've got a couple questions about that too, okay? So they were an abject disaster. We were missing shots. We were going away from our best players. But what is Taylor Jenkins known for? Two things as a coach.
I tweeted out last night. I feel like sometimes Desmond Bain's dribbling a football.
Agreed. He dribbled it off his foot three times in the final 5 minutes.
Too big? Like, how does he always dribble it off his foot?
Let me ask you two questions, though. Let me ask you a question. The two things that Taylor Jenkins is known for is what? He's a developmental coach and a defensive coach. He's a defensive coach. Those are things that he's good at, right? I lost my spot. Hang on. Here it is. All right. So from a defensive standpoint, the Memphis Grizzlies have been one of the top 5, top 6 teams in defense, right? So from the start of the season until Christmas, so the first really part of the season, right, the Grizz were 4th in opponent rim field goal, 1st in opponent corner 3, 1st in opponent 3 percentage, 2nd in half-court defense, and 4th overall, okay? Taylor gets better in the month of January. He's a defensive-minded coach. You make adjustments as a coach. You get guys in the right position. You don't, you tell a guy, hey, stop going over screens. Go under him and stop a dunk, right? Since Christmas, our January coach, who's a defensive coach, the opponent's rim field goal percentage, we're now in 20th place, 29th in opponent's corner 3, 29th in overall 3, 28th in half-court defense, and 24th overall defensively. As a defensive coach who hangs his hat on that, why are we getting worse?
Well, have we ever conceded the fact that Taylor Jenkins is a defensive specialist?
He's known as a defensive coach. That's what he's known as a developmental and a defensive-minded coach. Because we talked about it in the offseason that we had to go get somebody for offense because Taylor knows defense. We had to do something offensively to fix our half-court offense. There's
no doubt that they are giving up way too many open threes.
And we're not making adjustments. None.
But the team plays basketball well. They are capable of playing basketball well. The problem with this team is that they are not detail-oriented, and they have routine laps, or they overhelp. Or this is stuff you cannot sit here and tell me that it is not beaten into their brains not to overhelp. It's the thing that they've done routinely. At some point, you have to let the dog off the leash, and they've got to do their job. And routinely, there are open threes, and that is the design of offense these days in the NBA, is to run offense to generate open threes. You make them, you win. You miss them, you lose. This team is no different than the other one, and they just cannot figure it out. They get into the biggest critique I have, and this is a player's critique, is that they cannot course correct. They rely too much on emotion. They've got to hit their first shot. They've got to get that whistle early. They've got to not be the victim of a 10-0 run. If everything does not line up perfectly, this team is incredibly, remarkably average.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a preparation thing. I'm not going to sit here for 1 second and be like, oh, they forgot to coach closeouts. Like, no, they just cannot get out of their freaking heads. And this team is a team of veterans. Ja is in his 5th season. Jaren is in his 6th season. Desmond is in his 4th. They're all second contract max dudes here.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And they cannot They cannot just play basketball in a business workmanlike manner.
Phenomenal points. You're right. But Taylor Jenkins, I think Taylor is very smart, and he has them prepared for the game. In a game when his scheme isn't working is where it breaks down, and he can't course correct either. It's not just on the players. Taylor doesn't get guys in the right position anymore. He has no in-game feel for it. The other part of it, Drew, is since Christmas, we've played a lot more teams above 500 that are good in the Western Conference. So that's also a big part of it. Our competition has stepped up, and our team has gone the wrong direction. Yes, a lot of that's on the players. B, I just don't like Taylor Jenkins. The question was asked if he would land somewhere else if he gets fired. Taylor Jenkins absolutely will get another head coaching job at another rebuilding team. He's a phenomenal developmental coach. But the number of coaches that have been able to take the step from developmental coach to a championship level coach, you can count on one hand. It's like Pop, Phil Jackson, Budenholzer. Some of these guys have been able to take that step and win that title. I do not think that is Taylor Jenkins. He'll go to Charlotte or Atlanta or Detroit, somewhere that's building up, and turn them into a great team for somebody else to take him the next step. He has shown time and time again the inability to make in-game adjustments, rotation changes when it matters, stop momentum in front of him. The fix is it's both. The players need to recognize what they need to do on the court. Taylor Jenkins needs to be able to call a timeout. DJ made a point a few comments ago about Ja and Jaren stood at the scorers table for multiple possessions before they get in. You can afford a foul at that point. Have Jake LaRavia go grab Jalen Green so you can get your guys in. It's common sense that he's missing.
The opponent shooting 2 free throws is not the worst outcome if you can get your guys.
In the game. 100%.
Yeah. Taylor does not have the best feel. I mean and I think if I attribute it to anything, it is that he is overly reliant on analytics. This dude is a Penn grad. He graduated the Wharton School of Business.
Nobody's saying he's dumb.
But my point is that he looks at basketball like ones and zeros sometimes. And I've noticed a lot lately. You see, is it not Adam LaRoche? He's the former baseball player. Noah LaRoche, who the assistant coach is always standing on the sidelines walking to Taylor Jenkins. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, okay, what's his role in this? Is he the guy that's watching the minutes? Is he the guy that's, telling him when to sub or whatnot? I don't know. But it's weird. And he's not the best in-game coach
at all.
However, he's good at setting the table for the players to be in a position to succeed. When we've lost games, we're in a position to succeed, and we can argue. We're in a position to where we can argue with each other. Is it the players or is it the coach? Because it seems like both of them you can point fingers at both of them every single time.
Here's where it is. He needs to quit being a nerd, because I agree he's good at setting the table at the beginning of a game. They come in with an obvious game plan, but the flow and change, if it doesn't go by that game plan, he's screwed, and we're never going to be able to figure it out. Yeah. He's done better at halftime adjustments, and so I'll concede that if he has a length of time to prepare, be it halftime, be it leading up to a game, he can set the table. But in the fourth quarter, when it matters and you need your coach to make the right call, to get a guy in a game, to get a guy in position, make a defensive change a scheme, he is not there. That's when he's like the gif I put on Twitter where he's Bobby Hill throwing the egg into the wind and it comes back on his face, because his in-game adjustments suck. And that's where the great coaches separate themselves from the good coaches. Is analytics will get you to the table, but you can't claim a seat unless you know how to make adjustments to your analytics in the game.
Well, and this is winning is learned and winning is habitual. You've got to learn to win. And I had the thought the other day where we've lost playoff series, and typically that results in scar tissue, and it hardens you as a player who cares and wants to win. However, if you look at the playoff series that the Grizzlies have lost, there's always been something outside of basketball you can blame and not yourself. The Grizzlies lost after beating Minnesota. The Grizzlies lost to Golden State, and Dylan Brooks shot you out of the game. Ja Morant got hurt. Okay, what do you learn from that? Well, you know what? We would have beat him if Ja was healthy. We would have beat him if Dylan Brooks wasn't here, so we traded him. So it's all Dylan's fault, and it's all Jordan Poole's fault for banging Ja's knees. Not Jordan Poole, Gary Payton's fault.
Yeah.
Next year, you play LeBron, and Ja gets hurt again. And it's like, okay, Ja gets hurt. If Ja doesn't get hurt, we would have won. There are no scars that I feel like we have developed. We've just been able to blame things outside of our control. And I talk about playoff scars. You need these scars to develop to harden yourself and to take care of business and understand what it takes to win because you've lost. And in the Grizzlies' perspective, you've only lost playoff series because Ja Morant gets hurt. I don't know what it is, but you put yourself in winning situations. The Grizzlies do not have a problem with getting into winning situations. You were in these games. 4 out of the last 5 games have been decided by 8 points.
Agreed. Here's the thing.
You've got to execute.
I agree. And that's a great point. But I want to talk to this for a second too. Wayno says we don't need to overreact to a loss to Houston. And I agree. Like one loss we shouldn't overreact to. But when it's Houston and Dallas and the Lakers and Golden State, and you start compiling up these losses that we shouldn't overreact to, there's a pattern in each one of them. Like I should have done the math before this. I wish I would have. I would love comments or your comments. Think of games that we have won because Taylor Jenkins made right decisions down the stretch versus when we lost. Hang on. I know.
So
Hang
sick
on.
of that conversation, though, because Taylor Jenkins doesn't dribble the ball off his foot. Taylor Jenkins doesn't miss shots or miss assignments. You're in these games, man. Every time you're in these games. And we, the players, do not show up.
When you're in the game and you have an opportunity to play your best players and give them a chance to get in a rhythm in late games, when you're having your best guys on the floor, but they don't know their role, they're coming in and out, that 1 minute or one game, Ja's break is the beginning of the fourth. The next is the middle of the fourth. Next is till the 3 minutes. Like you need consistency in basketball. And there's a pattern in every one of these losses that there's no pattern. We're literally throwing shit, excuse my language, at the wall and see what sticks. I'm frustrated because sorry, Mom, I know you're listening, but like we're at the point where like it's the same song and dance every single one of these games. And Chris is right. Our talent gets us there, but you need a combination of the players and the coaches to get it over the finish line. And Ja can't win from the bench or the scorers table. He can't do it.
There is a reason why Bill Belichick was fired 2 years after Tom Brady left. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. What coach outlasts their star generational player? None of them. Sure, scheme matters. And you say consistency. Like, listen, I don't agree with the gap of time Ja's resting in the fourth quarter, but that has been consistent. He has done that ever since Ja's come back from injury. And he did the same thing in Minnesota. Ja made 2 amazing acrobatic low percentage shots and nobody had any problems.
I'm just tired
and the players screwed up this time.
I'm just so tired of the narrative.
Nobody's willing to put and I love the players. I'm on your team here, but nobody's willing to hold them accountable. Everybody, as soon as things go left, there is no talk of Desmond Bane consistently bouncing the ball off his foot, or the defense consistently allowing Amen Thompson to dunk a basketball like he's on a kid's hoop. It's only Taylor Jenkins.
Because I am sick and tired of the other teams exporting our matchups and we're not taking advantage of the same. It's always our starters come out, theirs come back in and dominate our bench. Yeah, some of that last night. Like maybe, Drew, maybe the players feel a little bit extra pressure because they're having to be put back in a situation where they have no momentum. They force it. Desmond is a professional basketball player. Dribbling it off his foot is not what he normally does. He did it last night. I don't know when the last time he dribbled off his foot. It hasn't been really recently, but maybe that these goofy lineups that we're running out there in these weird matchups is putting too much pressure on the guys. Why can't you just let them go out there and just freaking play basketball what they're good at?
Yeah, I agree. Let's play them 48 minutes.
I never once said 48 minutes. I never once said 48 minutes.
My problem is it's always a Taylor Jenkins problem. Like, Ja Morant was terrible until he wasn't against Minnesota. He has not played well. I mean, he's averaging 21 points this year. He's been very inefficient when he plays. Like, Desmond Bane has went through long stretches of being terrible. The only person this team can truly count on is Jaren Jackson Jr. right now. And
this is all I'm asking for right here is just the bulk of the minutes. It'd be Ja, Jaren, Dez. That's all I'm asking. Like, literally the only thing I'm asking.
But, you're complaining about this today because we lost, despite Ja playing 37 minutes and Desmond playing 34 minutes, the most of the season. The only reason why Jaren didn't is because he got in foul trouble. And so they played minutes. You're mad about the 2.5 minute span in the middle of the fourth quarter, which I've conceded to you. However, when it came nut cutting time and games are never decided, they don't stop the clock and call it over at the 4-minute mark in the fourth quarter. You've got to go through to the end. And at the end of the game, the last 3 minutes of this game, you had all your dudes out there and you had a 1-point lead and you blew it.
Yeah, and that's, again, a lot of that's on the players. A lot of that's Ja's just coming back in the game with no momentum and we're cruising because we're cruising in the wrong direction. Because we don't have an identity. Chris is exactly right here in the Twitter comments. We don't have an identity. Shots don't fall. Turnovers happen. You've got to have something to fall back on. What is it? It's not points in the paint. We don't give the ball to Edie and Jaren down low. Maybe it's corner threes. You're trying to force threes late. Maybe it's frustrating because maybe it's get to the rim and make that one extra cute pass and it turns into a turnover. Like, how many times are we seeing that where we're passing the ball within 5 feet of the rim and it's a turnover?
Again,
I don't know what our identity is. I don't know. Like, you have to set a tone for what the identity is, and we don't have one. We don't.
But see, and I disagree with that too. Like, are we really going to say like the coach dictates the identity of the team? Like,
I think his system has a lot to do with it. The system the coach puts in.
No, the coach enables the players and puts them in good situations. And the players, you talk about overpassing. You're right, but you think Taylor Jenkins give up the layups? Like, no.
Yeah, like one extra pass, this offense is all about passes, and it's the identity. And the coaches enabling them is setting up a system and identity to win basketball games. 100%.
Yeah, I think that Ja at his best, when he's been at his best, he has had the personality of a killer. And he has not had that this year. Call it injury preservation. Sure. Call it, being able to be fresh for the playoffs. Call it, I've called it vibes, whether the vibes are off. Like, it just, players make plays. There's been really good coaches who have gotten fired because you have bad players. And there have been, Ed Ogeron won a national championship at LSU. Because Ed Ogeron's good? No, because he had Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Like players execute, and they are the ones that win basketball games. I will never be a person that says a coach wins basketball games. I'll also rarely be the person that says coaches lose basketball games unless it's obvious that they are poorly prepared.
And not playing your superstars in crunch minutes, you don't think that's going to cost you games? You don't think don't think we can blame a coach in crunch minutes for not playing the players?
How many times do I have to say on this show? I would move the minutes.
You're talking out of both sides of your mouth right now, though, because you're saying we can't blame the coaches don't lose games, but we need to move the minutes because it's costing us games.
We had a lead when Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the court. This is not the first time this year that we have blown leads.
Wow.
I'm just not going to be the guy that's like, hey, if it's good, the players are good. If the bad, the coach is bad. That's heresy.
I'm just telling you, man, like, Ja cannot win games from the scorer's table. Shout out Kay, my coworker. Thanks for being here. We have to fix the rotations as long and short of it because you can't, you got to figure out how to get your guys in sooner off the scores table, take a foul. They can't score from over there. And it is wild to think that a coach not playing his players in crunch time costs games. That's just wild to me, man.
Yeah.
Wild.
Hey, listen, I've said on this show He doesn't have the best feel, but players win games.
Guys, I've done everything I could in 50 minutes to try and get there, but I'm tired.
Yeah, me too, because this is a conversation as old as I'm tired of talking about it. But the fact of the matter is like we only talk about Taylor Jenkins when we lose.
Not me. And go back and watch our shows. Not me. I've been on Taylor Jenkins for 2 years now. There is old, deep tracks of the Two Bucks Sports podcast way back in the day when Drew and I remember being in my condo in Myrtle Beach, getting upset on a text message thread with you and I talking about Taylor Jenkins 2 years ago. I have been in this camp for 2 whole years, and it's not gotten better. It's not. We're having the same conversation about in-game adjustments.
And like Chris says, listen to his show. It's on Bluff City Media.
Yeah, no bluffing. It's late Sunday nights on Mondays. Great show. Him and Evan. Awesome show.
Yeah. 2 things can be true. I've conceded that he's not the best in-game coach in the world. However, if you put in the spot, this team has been terrible with turnovers. Again, they lost turnovers last night. Like, at some point, you've got to just be like, hey, guys, just cherish the basketball and make the right plays and score and don't give up dunks under the goal.
If only it was simple. Right? If only it was that simple. But hey.
And if only it was as simple as changing the coach, because that's the answer too.
It could be if we don't make it, because these losses are going to keep adding up. And if they add up to missing the playoffs or getting bounced in the first round.
We've gained a lot of listeners since we've went live, and we appreciate every one of you being here. But if you are new, I will say this is what I said preseason. I'm still saying it now, despite me saying that players win games. This season is the measuring stick is playoff success. If we get bounced in the first round, despite our seed, I will have no problem with anybody, including Zach Kleiman, thinking that we need a change, because it is about postseason success. But I'm not just going to make him the scapegoat, as Michael Scott once said. Like, I'm not just going to be like they played poorly down the stretch. The players.
So one of 2 things is going to happen. So it's going to be, if it's on the players, then we need to blow it up and start again. Keep Taylor Jenkins and blow it up and start again is what you're saying.
No,
because players win games.
At least make it something that sounds like me.
Because players win games. We'll keep Taylor Jenkins and we'll get new players.
I think the players have to play better. You've got a big 3 that is really good that I wouldn't trade for anyone, but they have got to play better, and you've got to get help around them. The role players around them are not good enough. This team has got too many holes. You need a big man, you need a wing, and hopefully G.G. Jackson's your wing and Vince Williams is your other wing, and you need a big dude. However, like, you're going to win and lose with those 3 dudes, and you don't trade them for anybody. You go through slumps and whatnot, but
I think DG nailed it right here. Perfect summation as we wrap up this show.
I think he's making fun of you.
He's making fun of both of us. I hope the coaching gets better by Wednesday and the players win the game. But hey, appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate everybody being here in the comments. Astronomo, Black Weasel, Wayno, DG, Chris, David White, Cade. Dude, this is awesome. Great content, great show. Appreciate y'all being in this discussion and driving this discussion, because we are in a good position where we can talk about, is it our players? Is it our coaches? We know who the real answer is, but we'll let Uncle Buck keep living in his little world over there.
Yeah. The only thing that really needs to be changed is I need a new co-host. So
I'm taking applications right now.
No, I appreciate everybody in here. The chat was popping today. Listen, it's an 82-game season. We're about to play game 41. We're about at the halfway point. We're the 3rd seed in the West. Not all things are bad. And like Wayno says, don't throw out the garden with the weeds. I think in America we say don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I, for one, am not overreacting and asking to move heaven and earth. I know some people are, and I'm just not the one that's going to do it. We're going to figure it out. It's going to come around. I have full faith and confidence in the players on this team. They're good enough. Now, make a couple trades. I still believe get a couple key role players in here, consolidate the roster. This team's going to be fine.
At some point, man, we're going to have to hold some accountability to Taylor Jenkins. That's all I'm getting to. That's the last thing I want to say about it. Is at some point we got to hold, like, we can for 6 years we can have the same conversations, but at some point there's got to be some accountability. I'm not saying a midseason firing is it. No, absolutely no. A midseason firing never works. Milwaukee is just now recovering from a midseason firing last year. Absolutely not. But if we don't have playoff success, like, these conversations are what leads to a change in the offseason if it needs to happen. Because if you turn a blind eye to it and keep saying, the players need to play better, players need to play better your way into missing a window of one of the best young cores the NBA's ever seen. That's all I'm saying.
I'll say, if what has happened at Cleveland probably has Taylor Jenkins a little worried, because you look, they went from JB to Kenny Atkinson and they immediately shot through the roof. And sometimes that just happens with coaches after they've been here. The voice gets stale, and what will put me over the top outside of postseason success, what will push me over the edge and be thinking that Taylor Jenkins needs to be fired, is if he loses the big three. If he loses Ja, Jaren, and Bane, because players win games, but if the players feel like they can't trust the coach, it reacts poorly on that is the easiest way to lose your best player's motivation to play.
The way that's going to happen is if you keep losing games because your players aren't playing. But that's all we got for this week's Tuesday edition. Thursday coming up. Lots of great content coming up. I put that up a minute ago. Thursday, we've got a lot more conversation about the players. We'll talk about the Spurs game. We'll talk about the weekend coming up. Again, thank y'all for being in the comments. Y'all are what makes this show go. Not two buffoons from North Mississippi. Y'all are what makes this show go. We appreciate y'all being here. But there are no refunds for what you've heard today on the $2 Sports Show.
Good Lord. If there were, we'd be in big trouble. Yeah. We ain't got no money. With the $2, you always get what you pay for, and that's a goodish time.
Yeah. See y'all on Thursday.
Thank you for listening to the $2 Sports Show. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. For comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports, head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co and find out how you can become an insider. We will see you back here next time.